I'm Sara Chen.
And I'm Bart Smith.
And this is Behind the Yellow Tape, where we investigate the cases that keep detectives up at night.
Okay, so get this right. We're diving into this story, Robert Courtney, and it's wild. Basically, you've got this pharmacist, right, leading this, total double life. So on the surface, it's all picture perfect, right? Successful pharmacy, he's a church, he can pillar the community, the whole bit.
Yeah.
But get this. Behind this whole facade, he was diluting cancer meds.
Wow.
On a massive scale. We're talking 98,000 prescriptions, impacting over 4,200 patients.
That's a lot of people.
It's unbelievable. I mean, the audacity of this guy, it just blows my mind.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And what really gets me is the why behind it all, because Courtney, he wasn't some down-on-his-luck pharmacist struggling to keep the lights on. Not at all.
Right.
The guy was pulling in over $1 million a year. Seriously. But here's the thing. He was also knee-deep in these super risky business ventures. And to top it off, battling this mountain of back taxes. So it's what gives?
So wait, he's got $1 million income, but he's still cutting corners like this. I mean, come on. That's greed 101, isn't it?
Yeah, you could say that. Courtney was living the high life, luxury cars, throwing these extravagant donations at his church. He wanted everyone to see him as this big shot success.
Wow.
And he was totally fixated on keeping up this image, even if it meant, tossing his ethics out the window and tragically putting lives at risk.
Yeah.
And get this, he specifically went after those super expensive chemo drugs, Gemzar, Taxol, that kind of thing.
Why those drugs in particular? Was it all about the money, you think?
Well, yeah, partly. Think about it. Those medications are crazy expensive, right? And patients often need multiple doses throughout their treatment. So by diluting those specific drugs, he was basically maximizing his profit while at the same time, maybe staying under the radar for longer. It's chilling, really. The guy was calculating.
So messed up. It's he saw these patients, these people already so vulnerable, so desperate for any kind of hope. And he just saw an opportunity to exploit them.
Yeah, exactly. Preying on people battling cancer, come on. These people are already going through so much physically and emotionally. And to take advantage of that, it's unconscionable.
Totally.
And here's the really, really messed up part. Courtney's profit margin on a single diluted dose of Gemzar was $780. Yeah. Think about that for a second. He was making more from one diluted dose than many people earn in a week.
Wow.
All while, robbing patients of potentially life-saving treatment.
It's sickening. So, okay, I'm starting to get how deep this deception really went, but how in the world did he pull this off for so long? Was this guy some kind of criminal mastermind? Did he have some elaborate setup or what?
Well, actually, you might be surprised to hear that his methods were shockingly simple.
Really?
Yeah, almost unbelievably crude, actually. He was basically just using saline solution to dilute the medications. Sometimes, get this, reducing their potency to just 172nd of what they should have been.
Hold on. 172nd. Are you serious? So you're telling me some of these patients were basically just getting saline injections instead of their chemo meds?
Yeah.
That's beyond cruel.
It's awful. Just awful. Imagine, going through those grueling chemo sessions, clinging to hope. And the whole time, you have no idea that the medication they're giving you, it's basically worthless.
It makes you wonder, were there any red flags? Did nobody suspect anything was off?
Well, there were a few people who started noticing some discrepancies. They had this gut feeling that something wasn't right.
Okay.
One of them was this guy, Daryl Ashley, a sales rep for Eli Lilly, the company that actually made Gemzar.
Okay.
He started to notice that Courtney's ordering patterns, they didn't really match up with the billing records, which obviously, raised some major red flags.
So it sounds like he was wait a minute, something's not adding up here. So he reported it, right?
He did, yeah, he reported it. And thankfully, the people he reported it to, they took it seriously,
Good.
And that's when things really started to get rolling with the investigation. Now, there was another key player in all of this.
Okay.
A doctor, Dr. Verda Hunter. She was an oncologist, and some of her patients, they were getting their meds from Courtney's pharmacy.
Okay.
And she started having these nagging doubts,
Slightly.
Yeah, about how effective the medications actually were. Because she noticed that her patients, They weren't responding the way she expected them to. So she's seeing it firsthand. She's like, okay, something's up with my patients who are getting their meds from this pharmacy. Did she have, like, solid evidence at that point, or was it more of a gut feeling? It was more of a hunch at first. You know, that uneasy feeling you get when something's just not adding up based on what she was seeing in her patients?
Yeah.
But Dr. Hunter, she wasn't the type to just sit back and wait, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She wanted answers. So she took matters into her own hands.
What'd she do?
She secretly ordered tests on medication samples from Courtney's pharmacy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was determined to figure out what was going on.
Okay, so now things are getting really interesting. What'd those tests show?
Well, the results, they were shocking, to put it mildly. They confirmed what everyone had been afraid of. The meds, they were heavily diluted. Some of them, it was unbelievable that they basically had no active ingredients at all.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it was the smoking gun, you know? Exactly what investigators needed to finally nail Courtney.
And that's when it all came crashing down. It wasn't just, oh, his ordering patterns seem a little strange. It's like, no, this guy's been caught red-handed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a few isolated incidents, you know? This was a pattern of criminal behavior that went on for years, affecting thousands of people. Think about that, thousands of individuals and families.
It's hard to wrap your head around the betrayal those patients must have felt. Imagine thinking, okay, I'm putting my life in this doctor's hands. I'm putting my life in this pharmacist's hands. I trust them with my health. And then to find out it was all a lie.
Yeah, the emotional toll is immeasurable. I mean, imagine getting that cancer diagnosis, right? And dealing with all the fear and the uncertainty that comes with that.
Yeah.
And then to have someone just like completely exploit that hope, it's a wound that might never truly heal.
Right. It's just heartbreaking. And it's so important to remember, this wasn't some victimless crime, you know?
Right.
This is real. These are real people whose lives were affected. We know about Georgia Hayes, who sadly passed away after she received those diluted treatments.
It's a tragedy, you know?
Yes.
Georgia's story, it just breaks your heart. Here she was in her 50s, full of life, fighting breast cancer with everything she had. Her family, they rallied around her, supporting her every step of the way. They thought she was getting the best possible care, you know?
Of course.
And to find out later that her chances, they were compromised, that she was given false hope, it's just devastating.
And she wasn't alone.
Right. No, not at all.
Evelyn Walker, she's another one of Courtney's patients.
Right.
And she suffered for years because the medication she was getting, it was basically useless.
It's the insidious nature of Courtney's deception, you know?
Yeah.
Evelyn, she went through diluted chemotherapy for 3 years. 3 years.
Oh, my God.
Enduring those awful side effects, all the while her cancer was just like progressing. And I mean, the physical pain, that's one thing, but the emotional torture of clinging onto hope that had been stolen from her, that's got to be just unbearable.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about the ripple effects of something like this, the shattered trust, the doubt, not just for the victims, but for their families, too. That's got to stay with them.
Oh, absolutely. You know, we can look at all the numbers, right? The thousands of prescriptions, the millions of dollars that Courtney pocketed.
Yeah.
But we can't forget, behind those numbers are real people.
Yeah.
Real lives changed forever by his lies. And the impact, the psychological impact of what he did, it's so a lot. I mean, people lost faith in medical professionals. They started to question everything. They were like, wait, could this happen to me? It's a fear that's hard to shake.
Absolutely. So, with all this evidence stacked against him, what did Courtney even say for himself? Like, was there any remorse, any attempt to own up to what he did?
Well, during the trial, Courtney, he tried to play the victim, basically.
Really?
He claimed that he'd do it because he was under all this financial pressure, right? He tried to paint this picture of himself as this desperate businessman just trying to save his failing pharmacy.
Oh, come on.
But come on, the sheer scale of what he did. The fact that he kept such detailed records of his profits, his illegal profits, it just screams calculated. It screams cold-hearted profiteer. This wasn't some desperate act.
Yeah. It's almost more disturbing to think that someone could be so methodical, so deliberate in their deception.
Absolutely. And all the while, he's putting on this front, acting like everything's normal.
Yeah, right. Like he's this upstanding citizen.
Exactly. And that's what makes this case so chilling, this duality. Outwardly, Courtney was Mr. Respectable. But underneath, lurking below the surface, was this monster, essentially, willing to take advantage of the most vulnerable people for his own personal gain.
Exactly. So let's talk about the investigation. What were some of the key turning points that brought him down? We touched on Daryl Ashley and Dr. Verda Hunter, but what ultimately sealed his fate?
Well, their suspicions were crucial. I mean, they put Courtney on the map, so to speak. But the real turning point, it came from the undercover investigation. Get this. They managed to get hidden cameras inside Courtney's pharmacy.
Wow.
The footage they got was, it was damning. You could see him clear as day, diluting the medications, every move calculated, no emotion, just cold and detached.
It sends chills down your spine just thinking about it. I can only imagine how those victims felt seeing that footage. Like, see, I told you something was wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Validation, anger, you name it. And as if that wasn't enough, investigators, they kept digging, right? And they found his financial records, meticulously kept, detailing every penny of his dirty money.
Wow.
It was like he had the secret ledger hidden away.
A whole other set of books.
Exactly. And it blew his whole struggling businessman story right out of the water.
So the jig was up. The truth was out there for everyone to see.
It was undeniable.
Yeah, the truth always comes out in the end, doesn't it?
Always.
And justice was served. But it's a chilling thought, you know. Those reforms, those safeguards, they came at a real cost.
Yeah.
Thousands of people, their lives were upended by what this guy did. Did those who survived, did they ever find any kind of peace, any sense of justice?
A lot of the victims, they went after Courtney in civil court.
Makes sense.
They wanted some kind of compensation, for the suffering, the financial burdens, everything they went through because of him.
Right.
And, no amount of money can ever truly make up for that kind of trauma, but those lawsuits, they gave the victims a voice, a chance to stand up and say, what you did to us, it mattered.
To hold him accountable.
Exactly.
It must have been incredibly difficult for them to face him in court, to relive those experiences.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Those courtroom testimonies, they're powerful things, raw, emotional. For a lot of victims, it was a way to take back some of the control that had been stolen from them.
Yeah, to take their story back.
Exactly, to channel all that anger and pain into something positive, to make sure what happened to them wouldn't be ignored. That's resilience right there, finding strength even in the face of such incredible adversity.
It really is. And, this whole case, it's disturbing, obviously, but it also shows what happens when people speak up.
That's right.
When they question things, It's like we should never be afraid to advocate for ourselves, especially when it comes to our health.
I totally agree. We've got to be informed, ask questions, get a second opinion if something doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
The Robert Courtney case, it might be an extreme example.
Sure.
But it shows just how important it is to not just blindly trust in authority.
So true. It's a tough lesson, but an important one. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, this case, the Robert Courtney case, what are some of the big takeaways? What do we want people to remember?
Well, it'd be easy to just write Robert Courtney off as a mom spay, right?
Yeah.
Distance ourselves from what he did. But I think there's more to it than that. This case, it forces us to look at some uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about human nature, about greed, and what happens when ambition goes unchecked.
It's a reminder that evil doesn't always look evil, does it? Sometimes it hides in plain sight.
That's exactly it. And that's why we always have to be vigilant, Trust is important, but we can't just hand it out blindly. Question, verify, stand up for yourself. Those aren't just words. They're how we protect ourselves.
In this case, as terrifying as it is, it shows that speaking truth to power, holding people accountable, it matters.
It really does. The Robert Courtney case, it reminds us that even when the worst happens, even when trust is shattered, people can come back from that.
Right.
They can demand justice. They can create change. And that's where we find hope. In the people who fought for the truth, who refused to let this go unanswered. It's a reminder that even in the darkest times, we can't give up on justice.
Powerful words. And a good note to end on, I'd say. It stays with you. It really makes you think about the choices we make, the systems we rely on, and it shows the incredible strength of the human spirit.
I agree.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. It's been heavy but important.